Now that I've saved my file as Symbol Basics, we can go on. So we've gone through the fact that you can scale, rotate, and skew any of these symbols. Now, these symbols are always based upon the original symbol. If I go back to the library and to the black selection arrow, any of these symbols can be changed, and it will change all the others. If you double-click on an instance, it will go inside of that instance to the original symbol, and then I could possibly change the color, and you'll see that all of the instances change. So just be aware that you can double-click any instance, going inside of it, changing the properties of that instance, and all of the instances that are part of that same exact symbol will also change, even though each one will retain its own settings for transform. Now, there are other transforms that you can do. If you go to the free transform tool again, you'll notice that there's the distort and envelope, and they're grayed out. That's because we don't have the ability to use them with symbols. We only have the ability to use them with shapes and drawing objects, more specifically shapes. So just be aware that the three things, the scaling, rotating, and skewing, are the only things that we can do. Now, once again, do make sure that when you scale that you are aware of things being locked together. You can see this is 117 and 117.2, so they're exactly the same. You can see this button right here will do constraining, so that even if I go to skew it, oh, look at that, it won't constrain. It won't do it automatically. I'm going to undo that with Control Z. I guess what I wanted to show is that you can actually use these numbers and scale. So if you wanted to type in 150, you'll see that they are now constrained. If you wanted to rotate something to 45, you can see that it's pretty easily just by typing in those numbers. So another thing that is quite nice is just being able to do that. Now, another thing that you can do with these is go back to the properties, and we have something called color effects that you can do with 3D. I'm sorry, with symbols. 3D is right above it, and we'll get to that at a later time. Anyway, with this color effect, we have the ability to do a few different things: brightness, tint, advanced, and alpha. If I go to brightness, you'll see that I can brighten an object or darken an object. If I put it at 0%, of course, that is neutral. So these are settings for each individual instance of these symbols. And of course, if you double-click, you'll see it goes back to its original settings. And that's because you're going inside that instance. Now, you can also do tint, where you actually change the color. Notice that the tint is being applied to the stroke and the fill exactly at the same time. You might be able to see just a hint of the stroke behind. But the more that you apply a tint, it's basically like coloring the object that color. Let's go to alpha. Alpha allows me to change the percentage of alpha for that object. Now be aware, one of the things that we pointed out is that it treats the fill and the stroke differently inside that object. So that's why you'll be able to see this double area right here where it's a little bit darker. And we can control that with something that we'll be learning here in a minute. The other thing that we have is advanced. Now what advanced does is keep whatever settings that you had from the previous setting. If I go back to none and then go to advanced, everything will be set to neutral. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback there. But now we can change things. We can change our alpha, and we basically have two different ways. We have things on the left-hand numbers and right-hand numbers. This is the alpha percentage, and this is an offset. But you can see that I can change settings for red or green or blue. And one of the things that's kind of different with using the numbers here versus with tint is that sometimes you can keep a little bit of stroke or fill settings still there. You might be able to see some. It can be kind of interesting. And that takes a lot of playing around with to get for sure. Go ahead and play with that a little bit more, save your work, and go on to the next tutorial.